remember many times just raising my fist to God and say, "You have enough angels. You don't need her." But he chose differently. Our daughter had colon cancer, and she was supposed to live about 18 months, and she lived 4.5 years. Um, but she was either recovering from surgery or dealing with chemo. There just didn't ever seem to be a break. When it was getting close, and we knew that she did not have much longer to live, I was just screaming at my husband, "What has this all been for? What has all this been for? The pain?" And he said, "Well, she did go to England with her family, and you two went to Israel together, and she saw her son graduate from high school and the oldest daughter graduate from college. She came out here 3 times, and we went to Priest Lake for the week. So she made the very most of the time that she had. And when I did lose her, I don't think I took it nearly as hard as some of the other people in the family, because I know where she is. I know that she's with my mom and my sister and other relatives, and she's so inquisitive. She's talking to Jesus every day saying, "Okay, I've needed to know this for 40 years now. You have to tell me this." So I know she's getting all the answers, and that makes me very happy for her. And I know she's no longer in pain, and that makes me happy for her.
When I was 11, I developed polio, and I can remember being very, very sick. I remember laying in the hospital room with a iron lung adjacent to my bed, because that's what they were expecting to happen. I can remember that the doctors doing spinal taps on my back. I can remember in particular a nurse who was such a good caretaker of me in my very young years. That was inspirational to me. And she was a woman of God, and she would talk about how the Lord was going to heal me, and that someday I would help to heal other people.
Everyone thinks that Vietnam got over in February of '73 when the ground troops left. But the Navy was still there for 2 more years. Being on a supply ship, I was in and out of Vietnamese waters numerous times because we had 3 carrier groups there. The highlight of my time there was probably April 28th and 29th of 1975 during Operation Frequent Wind, which was the evacuation of Saigon. That time, there were so many helicopters coming out of Vietnam with whoever could fly them, with their family and friends on them, that were trying to escape the oncoming North Vietnamese, that there were so many helicopters on the deck of the USS Midway that they were pushing them over the sides. I counted at one time 25 of them in the air. They were like bees swarming around. And people were coming out in every size boat that you could imagine, from rowboats to freighters, doing everything and packed with people escaping. And that was probably the thing that I will remember most of my time there. I only knew that these were people who needed help, were desperate, and we were there. We were in a position to help them get away from oppression and live the life that we as Americans take for granted. Some friends of ours at church sponsored some of the refugees that came, kept in touch with them, and it was a wonderful experience to hear about what happened to them, how they were able to come here, assimilate, and become very productive members of our society. And so to have been a small part of helping them do that, that was a good feeling. These literally are our neighbors who we need to love and be there for them. So it has stayed with me my entire life and has been a basis for how I treat people.
We're called to feed the hungry. Going back to California with people coming in Cadillacs, we're called to feed the hungry. We're not called to decide who's hungry and for what reason they're there. I get there about 10 o'clock in the morning because I kind of like to be there before any other volunteers show up so I can get my bearings and figure out who's going to do what and when and how. And the kitchen is totally empty. It's quiet. It's kind of nice. And then I gather the food from the freezers and the walk-in storage, and I usually start cooking about 10:30 or 11, and then about 12:30 or 1 or 2 volunteers show up. The guests show up at 4:30, and we feed from 4:30 to 5:30, and then we clean up, and I'm usually home by 7. It's a long day, but it's just one day a month. My faith probably manifests itself by the fact that I love it, and people tell me that shows in what I'm giving. People say, we know you love it. That's why we ask you to do it. I think the common thread that everything I do is done for care and love.
I remember the first, one of my first patients had leukemia, and he was a little boy about 3 years old, and he was dying from leukemia. And it was my first death of a child that I had experienced at that time. And I'm still in touch with that family over all of these years because I was of comfort to them, but most importantly, they were very good to me as a brand new nurse. And it was very spiritual relationship that we had. Yeah. Dealing with death of children and illness of children and the handicaps of children breaks my heart, but I seem to be drawn to doing that. It's probably one of the reasons why I ended up going into mental health nursing, and that's when I got a PhD in psychology and became a therapist, and I worked with children and families, again with special needs families, and did that for the rest of my life, really, my professional life.
Don't know that people realize, but working at Eastern State Hospital is more dangerous than being a state trooper, or equally as dangerous as being at a prison. We had people who were criminally committed there, and the injury rate of staff out there is significant. Fortunately, I was only ever hit 2 times by the same person in the same week, because the voices told him that I was trying to hurt him, which was not uncommon. So it was fortunate that were the only incidents that I ever had, because there were much more serious ones by other staff out there. I liked the fact that I was performing work for a underserved and often disregarded population that really needed the services that we were providing.